we live, sir? Very good. And all have their microphones properly positioned. And good evening. We are at our March 13th Civil Service Commission meeting for the City of Glendale. Welcome all who are in attendance. We appreciate your participation, and those who are watching us on television. I hope that we reveal and make very transparent the processes that are employed here in Glendale as we support our distinguished workforce. And with that, we'll begin. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Manukian? Here. Commissioner Abkarian?
Here.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Here.
Commissioner Devine?
Here.
Chair Riccardi?
Present. And if I could have a review reading of the minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
Call for the question.
Commissioner Manukian?
Abstain. I wasn't here.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair Riccardi?
Approved. Thank you. It is now the opportunity for those present to engage in oral communications. That assumes, of course, that you have submitted a card identifying yourself and submitted that. And having no cards, we will move then to item number 4 on the agenda, and that is the recruitment and examination report. Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is your recruitment and examination status report. This report shows the current recruitment activity by each staff member, by department, the positions, filing periods, dates of exam. As a summary, again, we've been doing very well keeping up with the recruitment load. We did see an additional, about 20 additional requisitions come in the last month, which caused our list to jump a bit. So we now have 68 processes in place, but we'll continue plugging away. Again, this is a note and file item, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. Otherwise, it's a note and file.
Fellow commissioners, comments? Hearing none, we move to item number 5, eligible list so far established by the HR department. Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is our eligible list that have been established since last month. As you can see, pretty busy month. We had 10 lists that were established, 5 of them open, 4 of them promotional, and 1 of them promotional and open. If you have questions about any of these, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. I will note the second one down, Director of Public Works. We had a pretty decent turnout on that. We ended up with a list of 3, and the good news is that we have made an offer of employment to an individual for that. However, that won't be going to City Council for consideration until March 26th. So at that point, we'll know for sure if that appointment gets made that evening. Otherwise, if you have any questions on any of these items, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Just a comment as somebody who has spent a considerable amount of time in law enforcement. Once again, I see the issues and the challenges associated with recruiting police officers for our city. The number of applications received, 335, which is encouraging, but the number who have gone through successfully through the wickets, the various testing, 14. It again renews the questions that we've submitted to our senior law enforcement officials, Chief Povolitis and others, as to how and why the decrement in numbers and how we can improve the outcome of our recruiting process. And that's merely a comment from the chair. Again, always interested in bringing the best men and women to our city for enforcing our laws and regulations. All right, with that, we'll move on to class specification for approval number 6, Water System Supervisor. Mr. Doyle, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. This item is a revision to an existing class specification series for Water System Supervisor. This is obviously a series within our Glendale Water and Power Department. It's not been updated or revised since for about 15 years, so it really it's quite an update and needed updating in very many areas. A lot of the technology, the terminology, the equipment, the types of facilities, there's references to the SCADA system, and some minor tweaks in the minimum requirements, including the licensing, because there's both distribution licenses and treatment licenses offered by the state of California that are required at all these levels. I won't say there's any overriding themes other than the fact that we needed to update this series. We do have staff here to answer any questions you may have. Mr. Mike DeGhetto is here, who's our Assistant General Manager for Water, and a couple of his staff members, and Ando Vardanian from my staff who worked on this with them. So if you have questions.
I think I would appreciate just a little brief review and outline of the position itself and the gradations from 1 to operations supervisor. There are some new requirements, and I'm interested in how your department came to impose some of the additional job requirements.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name's Michael DeGhetto, Chief AGM for Water at Glendale Water and Power. And Mr. Chair, to answer your questions, this series follows on to what we call our Water System Mechanics series. And that's a series of positions as well that ends in a senior position. And so when we looked at this series, we started with that, to have a progression. So having been a senior water system mechanic, we used that as a starting point for the Water System Supervisor 1. And the prior version, as Mr. Doyle had stated, was kind of an old version, and it only had like 1 year of experience, whereas a senior has to have about 5 years of experience. So we started from there to make it progress. And what this group of staff members do, it's, if you ever notice, like if we have a main break or a leak, we'll have crew members on that, and we'll have helpers, water system mechanics, senior water system mechanics, and we'll have a supervisor overseeing that. And when you progress from a 1, so at the level 1, you're a hands-on supervisor that does some work as well. When you progress to the 2, you're a little bit higher level, and you might like manage more than one crew. Make sure you've got the parts ready, or that you're planning ahead to call for asphalt deliveries or things like that. And then it progresses up from there, and the top one, the water system operations supervisor, will plan and oversee all the crews for the day. They'll do things like reviewing overtime cards. They'll work on making sure the warehouse maybe has mins and max on certain parts and things like that they keep. And then really that water system operations supervisor, typically from there it'll be, the next step up would be like superintendent, would be maybe the highest level in that group. And Mr. Romanino is the superintendent that oversees that group, and he's here and helped Ando and I work on preparing and updating this spec. So hopefully that answers your.
And the initial entry is an open opportunity at Supervisor 1, or is this promotional?
In this case, it'll be promotional, and we have several staff members that meet those minimum qualifications that can apply for that.
And that would mean the formalized water system apprenticeship program as an entry requirement. I just tried to synchronize as I reviewed this, how you establish an apprenticeship when the opportunity is promotional.
Yeah, so the apprenticeship, it's an or. So you can go through the apprenticeship, have some experience, or you could just have more experience, say from another water agency. But in this particular case, you don't have to be an apprentice or have gone through an apprenticeship to be a supervisor. The apprenticeship is really, so the entry level is helper, which isn't in this series. Then we have an apprentice program where you get more experience. You also get the experience necessary to get your certifications from the state. And then if you graduate from the apprentice program, you automatically become a water system mechanic. So this would follow on after being a senior water system mechanic, if that makes sense.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your comments. And
I have
yes,
a question,
Commissioner.
just very logistically. Is water system helper the name that is set in Glendale, or is it just something that is known all over the place for in the water industry. Just helper just kind of seems like very loose word instead of saying maybe water system assistant or something else than helper. Helper just seems very trivial and
Chair McCarley,
Commissioner.
Commissioner Abkarian, thank you.
Abkarian,
Our distinguished past chairman.
the helper position, I understand what you're saying, and it's similar to in electric, we have helper as well. But
Okay.
in the water industry in general, more recently, we would call someone maybe a water distribution operator, one, or, but our, I guess, job series still has that name, helper.
Yeah, just maybe you want to consider changing that water system helper to something just a little bit more.
I agree, and it's something that we'll consider when we go to that job series and take a review of that.
Mr. Chair, it is a common
It is a common,
industry
okay, that's all I
standard.
want. If it's a common name that's used everywhere else so people would understand what it does, then I don't have an issue.
I don't want to say everywhere else, but it's relatively common in the industry.
Okay, all right, no problem. I don't want to.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. I believe we need a vote.
Second. Oh, sorry.
No, you're so far ahead of me. That's the efficiency of this commission. And so with that, we have a second, we have a motion, and we have a second to approve the class specification. I'm taking over your job, sir.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair McCarley?
Yes. I am looking at number 7. I understand from Mr. Doyle.
Yes, we'd like to postpone this item only because the department head for that department is out ill, was planning to be here, but something came up. So it's a high enough level position in that organization that it would be appropriate to only address it with his presence as opposed to anyone below him. So we can move that to next month.
And do I hear any objection from fellow commissioners? Hearing none, then it's directed that the matter be continued until next month's meeting. We'll move on to number 8, class specification for approval, purchasing coordinator.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is again a class specification for approval. This is a new classification that was developed recently and approved by the City Council last month. It's a middle management level position within our finance department, obviously, and it relates to our purchasing work unit. This unit has taken on an increasingly important role in our organization as we look at more closely at our expenses and methods of exerting financial controls. The city's recent switch to the Tyler Munis ERP system has kind of emphasized a need for additional training and not just in the implementation of this system, but probably ongoing training and coordination and just general hand-holding in our purchasing process. And that's what this position is about. And this would be kind of key to that as the Tyler system gets moved out to the organization. So this is, again, one classification within our purchasing section, and we would anticipate conducting some form of a promotional recruitment process in the next month or so, should the commission approve this specification. If you have questions on this, I'd be happy to try and answer them. We have today Michelle Flynn, who is the assistant department head for finance, and Afshin Bokai, who is our purchasing administrator, and Narek Petrosian, who helped put this together as well. So
I would be interested in the senior representative for just a few questions.
okay, Mr. Bokai.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate you being here tonight. Hope it won't be too incredibly challenging. If you
Good
could,
afternoon, Mr. Chair, a member of the Commission, Afshin Bukai, Purchasing Administrator with Finance Department.
thank you. Thank you, as I said, again, for attending. And if you could provide us with a wee bit of background.
Sure.
What I'm often interested in is what are the existing positions? Is this a position that appears to be new? You've identified a requirement based upon emerging technologies. which could not be satisfied with the existing skill set that you have in the finance department?
That's
Am I
correct.
correctly reciting the justification for the
That's
position?
correct. As Mr. Dole indicated, this position is created as a result of implementation of our new ERP system. Prior to that, many of our processes in purchasing and contract operation were manual. When we started the new ERP system, we changed from a manual process to a more automated process. So as a result of that, a lot of our people will have interaction with the financial system. So this requires more than 100 staff members within the different sections of the organization have a day-by-day interaction with the financial system. So this requires higher level of training that we had before. So we need a person to go out and train these people, a person with basic knowledge and understanding of how government purchasing operates and what the system requirements are, so they can go and train and constantly train a staff member within the organization to help them use the system to the maximum possibility and potentials. Basically, it's somebody with understanding of purchasing go out and train people. If I answered that question.
When you, just from, again, another background question with the ERP system, the Tyler Munis, now there are a lot of competing systems that are available, as I understand it, on financial management. It just happens to be that your department made a decision regarding this system.
Correct.
And at least at the present point in time, are you employing any individuals from the information management department to assist in this? Recognizing that they have sort of the inherent skills, it's an intuitive skill, they can
Right.
monkey with computers and
Right.
come up with the right responses.
We switched from PeopleSoft, which was old
Yeah.
ERP system, to Tyler Munis, and that decision made several years ago. And we went through RFP process. We looked at the several system. We decided to go with the Tyler Munis because of all aspects that are well aligned with our organizational need. This person that will go out and provide training is, for lack of a better term, is a three-legged stool personality that need to have understanding of technology, purchasing, and a good communicator to provide training. So right now, the person who's providing this service is one of my staff member who used to be a buyer, but a majority of her time now been devoted to go out and train people. So that's basically, we want to have a standalone position to be able to help departments with this need.
Expectation is that this will be a promotional opportunity for those within the city of Glendale,
That's correct, yes.
inside and outside of the finance department?
Inside the finance department.
Inside the
Yes.
finance department.
Yes.
So one of the requirements would be some experience, some level, number of years of experience in each one of those areas. But once again, I'll just express my concern because what you've done is, of course, commendable. This is, but it appears that a lot of it's grounded on the technology that you have so far acquired. So that almost drives the question, assuming that there is an evolution in finance systems as we see the evolution of technologies every 2.5 years, or some geometric statement about how technology changes rapidly. So does that mean that we create another technical assistant or purchasing coordinator, assuming that we move on to another system, another ERP
this system,
solution?
we hope that we're going to keep this system for, for at least a decade or two. The previous system, we had it for more than 20 years. So we think that it's since we started a new system and this system stays on for at least 10, 20 years, it's a very good thing that we have somebody in-house with purchasing and finance background and technology background to be a good communicator and good educator to go out and educate people. So when they are, when there is any new upgrade, we don't anticipate to purchase new system, but we anticipate a lot of upgrade to the existing system. So this person is constantly need to get trained to go out and train other people.
All right. And since you are a senior member of the finance department, how is the position related to the banding, the compensation banding schemes?
I believe it's comparable to an analyst position. It's an entry-level management position.
Okay, that's helpful.
Right,
I'm going to be
right.
asking that question of each one of these class specifications because, notwithstanding that our particular responsibilities do not relate specifically to pay and compensation, it allows me to at least mentally visualize where the position is vis-a-vis the cost of that employee to the city, which is always an issue that you certainly, having appeared before the council multiple times,
We
discussed.
consulted with HR department,
Yeah.
we reviewed various aspects of position, and we look at it, and this is very comparable to an analyst position
All right,
in the organization.
Members of the commission?
Second.
Call.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair McCarley?
Yes. Thank you. And with that, we move on to a job bulletin for posting.
Police Sergeant?
Yes, police sergeant.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a bulletin as opposed to the previous items, which were job specifications. This bulletin is for police sergeant, which is really the first line supervisor within the police department. It's a position within the GPOA bargaining unit. It's not a management position, but just a first line supervisor. The reason this is coming before you is under our rules, we have specific purposes for having bulletins approved by the commission. In this case, this is a safety promotional recruitment process. Therefore, the rules do require all of those bulletins to come before you. This bulletin is fully consistent with the approved class specification that exists. And I will say the selection process, as illustrated on the bulletin, is the same as in the previous administration of this exam, where we have a written professional panel and a promotability panel components. So with that, the commission has any questions, be happy to try and answer them for you. And we do have Chief Polovalitis here, and Mr. Chavez from my staff is here as well.
I have some questions.
Yeah. Chief, thank you. I think we have several questions from our commission members. Go right ahead.
Hi, Chief, how are you?
Good evening, members of the commission.
In the section under minimum requirements, ability to, the very first line is accomplish complex tasks through others. I don't know what that means. Through others?
This is the first line supervisor, so this is the first time where you step into supervisory capacity. So
Right.
you are no longer tasked with doing the job yourself. You are tasked with accomplishing it through
Oh.
the personnel assigned to you. So when we say working through others, it's
Okay.
like you're no longer maybe turning the wrench. You might be at times, but you're no longer turning the wrench. You're directing staff to do that.
Okay.
You're responsible for making sure the task gets accomplished.
Thank you. I'm satisfied with the explanation. Thank you. Under education and training, I've seen this in previous sessions. We have 60 college semester units. I assume that means minimum requirement is for them to have 60 semester units. And then we have AA or AS degree preferred. I understand some people have 60 units without the degree. Some people have it. If they have an AA, they already have a 60 units. So I don't have an issue as to that. But then I always get caught up on the note section when it talks about an equivalent combination of experience, education, and or training. So it begs the question that how could someone be in a supervisory position short of at least having a couple of years of college under their belt? I suppose one can be if there's requisite equivalent combination of experience, education, but yet I note that any police officer with 3 years on the force can apply for the sergeant position. My question is, does that mean we're looking at experience, knowledge, training, not just limited to the 3 years of the person's tenure as a police officer, but rather overall, perhaps outside of the police force experience?
I mean, all of that comes into play for being a supervisor. You have got to understand the technical aspects of the job in order to be a police officer. That first line supervisor for us is absolutely critical in training and absolutely critical in making sure that we're accomplishing our tasks in accordance with law, policy, and all that type of stuff. So all of that comes into play, and although you can apply it 3 years, and there might be a few who do that, it is much more common to see people promoting to sergeant with several years beyond that, just because it takes, I'm going to tell you, it probably takes 3 years just to kind of go, I've dealt with most things once. It'll take 5 years probably for most people to feel very comfortable at sort of a journey level, and then in order to get somebody else to do it, it does take time and experience to do that. So most of the people who end up being very successful in the process, with some exceptions, tend to be more tenured people.
And a catch-all question, is it fair to say you're satisfied with this bulletin, with all its contents? Or would you change anything if you wanted to?
The process, the testing process for sergeant has followed this sort of format for, I think, as long as I can remember. It's a format I went through when I tested for sergeant. It seems to have served us very well in getting good supervisors into our ranks.
Okay, and in the supplemental questionnaire, there's 5 questions, and each of them have an asterisk before it. And then that asterisk is then, at the end, described as a required question. Question number 3 is asking about whether or not the person works currently for a public agency or has worked for one in the last 5 years. Given the fact that it's a promotional bulletin, I don't know.
The answer to the question should be yes. If the answer to the question is no, we're going to have a problem.
So, but it seems as a foregone conclusion. So I kind of got caught up thinking, why is that?
We do have the authority to eliminate that particular question.
Well, I'm
on
just
the
putting
bulletin.
it
It is an
out
interesting
there.
observation.
I know that in the past there's been other fellow commissioners who've had other issues, and I believe they'll probably raise them perhaps, and that is in the selection process as to having a community panel, and there's always been back and forth on that issue. So with that, I yield the rest of the time. Thank you, Chair.
Any further comments on the part of the commissioners?
Move to approve.
Second.
Question?
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair McCarley?
Yes. Moving on to item number 10, an additional bulletin, new job bulletin for approval, Public Safety Business Administrator. This is the Police Department, GPD, once again. And this is not a sworn position, I assume? It is not. Chief, you want to?
You have questions?
We should. Anything upon review, all of us have had the opportunity to review the document. Are there any questions amongst the members of our?
Mr. Chair, I should just briefly explain why this is coming before you.
Yeah, that might be worthwhile.
2 reasons. One, that in this position's previous posting, it was done on a promotional basis. The department is proposing that it be on an open basis. That's one. The other reason is that we have a modification of this position from its approved class specification. Our intent is to broaden the pool of applicants, and we've lowered the experience requirement from 6 years to 4. So thus,
I appreciate that, Mr. Doyle. Chief, if you could come forward, because this sort of opens up I don't want to extend this for too long, although we're near the end of our agenda. So this appears to be an opportunity for those who are pursuing a law enforcement career, but as civilians associated with the department. Is this one that is hierarchical, meaning you enter as a administrator or secretary to your office and find yourself after a period of time as a public safety business administrator? If we were to compare this to the hierarchy and rank hierarchy on the sports
that
side.
is a possible path. We changed the path where we have some public safety business assistants, specialists, coordinators, and then the top one is an administrator. This is the person who really works very closely either with the Administrative Services Division Commander or in reality very directly with me because it impacts budget. One of their major issues is maintaining, operating, controlling the department's budget, making sure that the funding is coming from the right sources, overseeing asset forfeiture funds, overseeing grant funds. We're actually looking to expand this role to make them more responsible for writing and overseeing the grants. So this was an absolutely critical. It is in the promotional path because somebody occupying this position would be eligible for the civilian commander position.
That's the next one.
So this is
Surveying
the
command position.
level of management where somebody occupying this position would then, at some point, if they, so chose and have the requisite experience and skill set, would be eligible to test for the civilian commander position.
And what is interesting, and I'll turn to Commissioner Gazarian, is that this is open and there must be some reason or rationale. I'm not discouraging or encouraging the use of an open classification, but it does suggest that you're going to go outside and find a suitable candidate, whether from inside or outside.
I need to find a suitable candidate, and I don't have, I might have a personal preference for somebody inside the organization, but I really need to find a suitable candidate for this. The police department's in such a position that we don't have backup for a lot of these positions, and it said the person who occupied this position before left with about 17 days notice. So so a lot of institutional knowledge walked out the door, and we're working our way through that process. So finding somebody who is the right fit for this position, that not only knows the technical aspects of this, but either has the ability or has the capacity to grow to be able to work as this and to be able to work with the executive team of the police department is absolutely critical for us. So, as I said, so the recommendation from the police department is to actually go open, but there are people in the city that we are certainly encouraging to apply.
And this would be deemed a management position.
It is.
Any further questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Gazarian.
You comfortable with, Chief, are you comfortable with the reduction in the experience level from 6 years to 4 years? Because I note that you're going to be relying on this person first and foremost, as you stated and as it's described here, in the prepared and reviews of reports for presentation to City Council, City Manager, et cetera, and community organizations. Are you comfortable with 4 years?
I am comfortable. I was very involved in the process
Okay.
of discussing what we thought it was, and part of it is to be able to make sure that we can have a broad outreach for candidates that would do there. As said, and if I were making some trade-offs, I would rather have a broader pool of candidates and the ability to have somebody grow and work with our department, because maybe the way that we've done things over the last 10 or 15 years is not the way we need to continue to do them. The world is changing around us. Asset forfeiture is changing dramatically. Budgets are changing dramatically. What we're going to ask this person to do is changing. And so finding the right person who has not only the skill set, but the ability to change and the ability to really be a consummate team player with the rest of us going, this is how we can accomplish the goals, because this will be a key part of our team of going, all right, here's what what I have to accomplish, and the answer, if I don't have the money, sometimes isn't the right way. It's like, so how do we make this work? How do we move it around to make it go?
In the previous description, and perhaps this is a question, the answer may come prior to the chief's current tenure as chief, Mr. Doyle. It not only required 6 years, it also required including 2 years of experience working in supervisory capacity. In the new approach, when we're speaking about 4 years of responsible experience, I don't see any longer in that paragraph any supervisory experience, a period of time, 2 years, 1 year, etc. What is your understanding of that change?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gazarian, my thought would be that I think more of an emphasis upon the budgetary administrative background as opposed to supervision. This position will supervise a small staff, but I think that's the emphasis the police department is looking for in a budget that's, what is it, $60 million or something like that?
About 90.
Oh, I was off by.
So I know what I'm voting for. I'm now voting for, instead of 6 years, including 2 years of experience in the supervisory capacity, I'm now voting for at least 4 years of responsible experience performing administrative work involving budgets, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to know what I'm voting for.
No, you're absolutely correct, Commissioner Gazarian. It said the supervisory equipment requirement has been removed, and part of that is really sitting down and looking and in discussions with my team of going, all right, what fit do we need? How are we going to make this work as a fairly tight-knit management team? What would we rather teach and where we go? And I think our collective consensus is we would rather bring somebody in that might not have supervisory experience but has the potential because we can teach that, and we can teach them what we need to know, and we're willing to make that investment so that we get the right person, because we also really need the technical skills. If I have a great supervisor and someone who doesn't have the technical skills, as a team, we're in trouble.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Call for the question.
Commissioner Menuchyan?
Yes.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Chair McCarley?
Yes. All right, gentlemen, moving on to reports. Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the only report we have are the past two performance evaluations. And as you can see from the report, again, lots of good progress, 3 first notices and 3 second notices. As a reminder, next month would be the first month that we employ our new policy relative to having the department directors here on second notices. And the executives have all been duly warned.
Right.
Appreciate it. Well, we'll see how our system, our improvement fares in the next couple of months. Any questions to Mr. Doyle? All right, that brings us to Civil Service Commission. Any staff comments?
I have a question, a request.
All right, we'll begin then, Mr. Doyle, and then we'll work across as to the commissioners. Seeing nothing from Mr. Doyle, I'll begin on my right.
So these agendas that we get, they refer to items and pages, but there are no pages. And so either let's put page numbers, or let's remove the reference to the pages.
There is page numbers in the bottom on the right side.
There isn't in mine. And
Yours is the only one.
and there wasn't one that I received in the mail that I
There's
went
something going wrong with Mr. Gazarian. You should take care of our fine commissioner.
Because all of mine has page numbers on it.
No, there are none.
That's it, only,
There are none.
yours is special.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Everybody else has page
Thank you.
numbers. Thank you, Mr.
I
Gazarian.
think that's the one he printed.
But even the one I got in the mail didn't have it. That's why I made a note for myself.
This is a serious transgression, and we'll note it for the record.
I'm just saying.
Discipline will be imposed.
Thank you.
Send
I'm
them
just
blank
saying.
pages.
All right. Mr. Devine. Mr. Abkarian. Hearing nothing, I believe we are, and I'm looking at this as number 13. This is indeed closed session. I'll ask those who have no part in the issue of employee discipline and the hearing for that to vacate. Thank you, and we'll shut down our...
We're just going to note that we will likely be reporting out on this item, but not on camera.
That is correct. And so I think a recommendation that we shut off GTV 6. Mr. Petrosian?